So this is a very auspicious time to be living, because it's time to really leap forward. As human beings, we've been living kind of on a more base level, and we have so much more potential to do more, to encounter and use the power of our light, to use the power of our knowledge, to use the power of our energy to self-heal and to heal our world. And right now is a time period of leaping forward into using that power, using that energy, learning how it works, and allowing it to work for us. And it unlocks the key to understanding who we are. It's definitely, I mean, there's many esoteric tools that help us answer those questions, but astrology is definitely a valid and very accurate way of answering those questions. So I recommend it highly for sure. Tonight I'm going to give some background about what astrology is and then go into what it can tell us. But I thought I would start with a little bit about who I am and where astrology came from in my world. I've kind of been interested in things esoteric for quite a while since I was a teenager. I started looking into tarot and psychic readings when I was about 14. And when I was 19 was when I got my chart charted. And so I got this piece of paper back with a circle covered with glyphs, and I said, whoopee, I'm a circle with glyphs, you know. But it still didn't mean anything to me. But I knew that it had a truth, although I didn't know what that truth was at the time. And it wasn't until the following year, October of 1987, that I had a reading in which that circle, that chart of glyphs was explained to me. And I had that reading recorded for me, so I was able to listen to it again and again, and that is where my learning really took off from that point forward. So pretty much I've been studying astrology ever since. So, let's see, 87, so that makes 14 years, so quite a while. As an astrologer, one of the things that I learned from one of my favorite authors, is keep a hard copy of everything. I had a little computer mishap once where I thought I lost my data, and it made me very sad. And it was just a fluke. I was able to get it all back, so I started printing everybody out after that point. And I've always said that I've got a growing collection of charts that I've studied from clients, from friends, from events that I've looked at. And I always said, you know, I must have thousands, but I never really counted. Well, the last couple days I spent several hours counting just so I could have a figure. And by golly, I have looked at 1,046 charts. So, yay, I'm a professional now. I think when you cross over the 1,000 mark, you pretty much know what you're doing. So that made me very pleased. In addition to astrology, I've done astrology, like I said, I learned my own in 87, so that opened up the doorway. And I kind of started beyond that by doing friends' charts and comparing from real data from people that I knew and watching them and watching their lives and kind of learning through what, through looking at actual people. And it wasn't until 94 that I took that leap of faith and started doing readings for strangers. And that's when my business, Cat Over the Moon, was born in 1994. And I've been going ever since. That was the time that I opened up professionally and started doing charts for people that I didn't know already. And actually, that's one of my favorites, because then you just meet the person head on, share the truth with them as the stars see it. And when you don't know somebody and you tell them all about themselves in fine detail, it's amazing. So I really love doing readings for people that I've never met, because it's just right there, point blank. It opens up this whole universe of information. And the fact that we didn't know each other really adds to the credibility of the information, which I am thrilled by. Okay, what astrology is. Astrology is a roadmap to the planets. First of all, we've got two systems going on at the same time. There's astronomy, which is the measurement of where astronomy is the scientific part. It's the measurement, where the planets are in reference to each other. Now, first of all, we here as human beings are standing right here on this Earth, the third planet out from the sun. And in galactic terms, we're really in an insignificant place. So it's really interesting to see the broader spectrum of the whole and to see each of our places in that broader spectrum. But what we take with astrology is astrology puts meaning into the placement. We've got the measurement of where the planets are. That's the astronomical data. And astrology gives it meaning. Now, where did astrology come from? I have no idea. It's one of those great mysteries of life. It's like, who built the pyramids? Who set up Easter Island? It's not known where it originated. It's not known who thought it up. And it certainly is amazing, because as it speaks the truth about who you are, it's like, wow, who figured this out? It's really a question, but we don't know. It's not known. It's thousands of years old. There's references to it in ancient texts. So there's been learned folks using astrology as an active tool for centuries. It's only been the recent centuries with the Christian church taken off that astrology was kind of put under a rock for a while. But now that we've passed the turn of the century, it's time to really blast it forward so that we can learn from what it tells us. So astrology as a whole, what we're doing is we're looking at the bigger picture. We're looking at the galaxy, the whole galaxy. We've got, let's see, how many planets do we have? Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Chiron, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto. We've got 10 bodies right there, as well as the moon, which is another body that we count. And astrologically speaking, we look at the sun as well. Because we have to keep in mind, all of astrology, the data is based on the viewpoint of measuring from the Earth. So we are standing on the Earth and we are measuring outward. That's why we say the sun moves in astrology. The sun doesn't really move because it's the center, but we have to keep in mind always that we are measuring from the perspective of standing on one of these moving bodies as well. So we have to change our focus of how we see or how we perceive the motion of what it all means. Now, but most of what people know with astrology is what's known as their sun sign. And most people have read or looked up or whatever what their sun sign is, and it has a philosophical meaning that goes with that. But what does it mean to have a sun sign? Well, the signs are actually a system of measurement. So what this is its location. And what astrology does is it puts meaning into the location. And of course, each one of the planets has their own meanings as well. So it brings the whole system, each one of the parts, together into a cohesive whole. And each one of us are representations, are physical representations of the initial point that we originated, that we were born. And from that point, that we set up a roadmap of the planets, and that's where the esoteric meaning comes from for each one of us, who we are. So I've got a couple of little signs here. This is what a chart is. A chart is like a roadmap to the planets. In simplistic terms, I like to think of it that way. Roadmaps are my friend. And then astrology, what that is there's meaning in the motion of the planets. And it's putting all those meanings together into a cohesive whole. Now, what we have is many, many, many systems working on top of each other. We have the planets. Each one of the planets has their own meaning, so that's one layer of information. But each one of the planets are in a particular location. And of course, all the planets move at different speeds because they all have a different length of orbit. So some of the aspects or topics within astrology, the timing of it goes really fast. The fastest motion thing, the fastest moving thing is the moon. It moves about a degree of measurement every 2 hours. So that's the fastest moving body, astrological body that we know of that has that solidity. And then the slowest moving from our perspective would be Pluto, which is the furthest planet out. That one takes about 15 years to get through a full sign. So it takes about 3 or 4 months to get through a degree, or maybe even 6 months, something like that. So it's got a much longer perspective, and each one of the planets are thereby have different series of timings throughout as they travel, and that's where the different timing comes in as to how they influence us. So each one of us is kind of steady and stable from that original point that we began. That's what's called your natal chart, is looking at that roadmap of where the planets were at that moment, and charting that moment. There's different levels of information to look at. First of all, there's the date, a particular date that each one of us came into being, our birthday. That date is what sets all the planets in the location, in the sign. But on top of that information, on top of finding the sign placement for each of the planets, we also have another factor to look at, and that is that we are standing, again, on the Earth, and the Earth is a rotating body. It's constantly moving. So every moment of time, our perspective of where we're looking at out in the universe shifts. And it's that data, that data is based on the minute of time, the hour and the minute. And from that is where the chart itself is cast, the beginning point. The beginning point is what's called your ascending sign or rising sign. And that point is the point that the eastern horizon is pointing at out in outer space at that particular minute. Now, from this data is where the chart itself, where all the planets are plotted into the circle. So this minute, what do I want to call it, principle, is what really sets the exactness of the chart. And knowing where the planets come out in the chart, this is what sets what's called the house placements. The houses are just divisions of the sky, and that's based on the time, the minute, the hour, and the location of the planets is based on the date. So again, we've got those two systems working on top of each other. So specific to this minute quality is where the real exactness of astrology comes through, because it's through setting that initial starting point is what makes the houses all follow through, and what puts all the planets in what house they're in. And it's through the house placement, that's where the energy of the planet comes out. That's where we, as individuals, experience the energies that they are. So we've got lots of complex systems going on top of each other. However, each one of the systems mirror themselves, because they each the meanings of the systems repeat. Okay, a chart begins, or what's known as the astrological beginning is the sign of Aries. And I'm not sure why that's the beginning, but so be it. It is. Yay, are you an Aries? Hurrah, you're at the start. And from that point, all of the signs follow through. So the first energy is Aries, which corresponds with the planet Mars, which also corresponds with the first house in an astrological chart. The second house, or the second placement, is Taurus. And Taurus is ruled by Venus, so again, that similar quality with Venus, and it rules the second house. So when we talk about second house, we mean the same thing as Venus qualities, and we mean the same thing as Taurus qualities. And the same idea with the first house. First house means the same as Aries, which means the same as Mars. The next, and I'm going to throw a lot of information at all of us, so just kind of soak it in, and we'll be okay. Because it's really complex, but that's what I'm here to tell you, is how complex it is, and it's amazing that it all works as specifically as it does, because it's just incredibly intricate. The third placement, or the third sign, is known as Gemini, and again, we're talking about measurement. So the first is Aries, is actually 30 degrees. Oh, let me talk about degrees. In space, everything goes around in circles, so we're dealing with circle measurement. So a circle has 360 degrees in it, and so it's a whole different system of measurement. We're not talking miles. We don't deal in distance per se. What we're dealing with is angles within a circle. A circle has 360 degrees, and it's cut into 12 parts, or 12 pieces. And that's where the 12 signs of the zodiac, or the 12 houses of a chart, come into play or come into being, is through this quality or idea. Let's see, where was I? Third house. The third house, or so to say the third house is equivalent to, say, or Gemini, would be equivalent as saying the third segment of 30 degrees. Cutting it into the 12 pieces, cutting the circle, which is 360 degrees, into the 12 pieces, makes each one of the pieces 30 degrees of distance. So we're talking about degrees of distance. So to say that something is Gemini is to say that it's in the third section of 30 degrees. So things could be given as the word of what they are, or the word of their placement, or we could reduce them to all numeric measurements, which is, again, a whole different system. But it's through those numbers is how we do comparisons and how we know the timing of when things happen. But I'll get to that in a while. Okay, the third house, or the third sign of the zodiac, is known as Gemini, and it's equivalent to the third house, and it's also equivalent to the planet, or it's ruled by the planet Mercury, which is the communicator. The next placement is Cancer, which is the fourth house, and the fourth house is ruled by the moon. That brings in the body that's not one of the original 10 planets, but it still is one of the major active players in the whole system. And the fourth house is the place of the home and being rooted and mothering. The next one is the fifth house, which is ruled by Leo, which is ruled by the sun, which is, again, not one of the planets, but we still use it as a planetary definition. The sun is where we shine, ironically enough. It's what we are here to do. It's what our purpose is. It's why we are here. So what we know of as our sun sign, which is based on that initial date, that is the core of why we are here. The philosophical meaning to whatever sign that is that each one of us originated in, that's what we're doing. But of course, each one of the planets has a meaning as well, and that's what creates the bigger picture of who we are as individuals. Okay, the next placement is, let's see here, where am I? The sixth house. Sixth house is ruled by Virgo, which is, that's the sign. And the planet that goes along that is the planet Chiron. Chiron is kind of a newcomer to our knowledge. It was just discovered in 1977. There's still plenty of people out there that don't know it exists, but it does. And that has to do with fixing and healing and making things better. It's the wounded healer. It's figuring out what's wrong and figuring out how to fix it. The next place around the circle is, or the next sign is Libra, which corresponds with the seventh house, and that is also ruled by Venus. Venus is the last planet that's double ruled, and I think when the next planet is discovered, Venus will have Libra to itself, because Taurus is going to get the new planet. But that's not happened yet, but it's coming right up, because how could it not come up? Because it seems so obvious, because the world is so perfect in terms of how it flows and how it goes. Okay, Libra. Oh, and Libra has to do with balance and harmony and relationship, the other, mirroring the other through the self and seeing them, or seeing the other as a mirror for the self, I'll put it that way. The next placement of the next sign is Scorpio, which is equivalent to the eighth house, which is ruled by Pluto. This is the transformer. This is going deep within your emotions, deep within who you are, and bringing it out to the surface. Giving birth to the new self. In order to give birth to the new self, the old self has to be completed. It has to be dead to itself. So the eighth house, or Scorpio energy, has a real intensity to it, death and rebirth. The next placement is Sagittarius, which is the ninth house, which is ruled by Jupiter. So again, we've got these three levels of definition interacting. And this is the house of philosophy. This is the house of seeking and finding your truth. And this is the sign of that. Sagittarius is the sign of the philosopher, the thinker, the one who wants to educate themselves and go forward and know more. The next placement is the 10th house, which is Capricorn. That would be the sign Capricorn. And it is ruled by Saturn. This has to do with life's work, life's karma, building a structure, and going forward. And having a sense of, kind of having a business sense, or a sense of seeing how things structurally work together. The next place, or the next sign around the zodiac is Aquarius, which is the ruler of the 11th house, what's called the 11th house. And the planet that corresponds with this is the planet Uranus, which is the revolution. This is opening up to your full potential and allowing yourself to come out, having the freedom to be who you are, and then go forward from that place. And then the last sign is Pisces around the whole circle. Pisces rules the 12th house in the pictorial version, in the chart version, and it's the 12th house is ruled by the planet Neptune. And this is going into your inner psyche, going into your inner soul, encountering your inner mystic or your inner mystical, encountering your psychic, and processing all of that and forgiving yourself in order to be reborn again in Aries. The cycles constantly continue and they come back again. It doesn't end with Pisces. It simply starts over with Aries again and keeps going and keeps going and keeps going. Each level of the cycle, however, we're at kind of a different level of knowledge. But it doesn't ever stop. It keeps going each time. So going from this place, what astrology does is it gives or brings meaning into all of the data. We've got the planets all moving around in their own respective speeds, moving around the sun, going around, circling, circling, circling. And they're all at relatively different spaces every time because they don't move with the exact speed. So some of them move faster. Let's see here. Mercury goes around the sun, I believe, in like 10 months. So it's quicker and it kind of builds on itself. Every year it gets a little faster. And Venus also has a shorter than a year length of time. And then, of course, then there's the Earth, and then Mars, the next planet out from the Earth, is like a year and 3 months is its distance of going all the way around and then repeating itself. So each one of the planets has a different speed to it. And it's putting all of that together is what creates the cohesive whole of who we are. Now then, what we do when we chart this moment, the planets all move at constant speed. This is a quality of physics. So it's known where they are, and it's known where they're going to be when. And it's through knowing that information, that's how we're able to chart individual charts, our individual roadmap to the planets that explains who we are, or at least that initially sets that picture, and then the further explanation comes from knowing all the knowledge that goes along with what each one of the levels means. But to get across again that it is a very in-depth and complex picture of who we are that creates how we are as individuals. We are so much more than simply just our sun sign, which is kind of the bulk of what people know, or that's where their knowledge begins and ends, is just that place. But each one of the planets in our system, of course, astrology, as we know it from this system, just measures the planets within our solar system right here, where we are. And each one of the places that they represent brings in a different quality. And what astrology does is it brings meaning to those placements. And it brings meaning to our perspective of how we perceive those placements. Now there's another level of information that makes things even more complex, and that's the perfection of the mathematics involved with the measurements. There's particular angles within astrology as the planets move and create angles one to the other, with, of course, the Earth being our fulcrum because it's our center point. It's where we're starting from, so it's our pivot down there. Different mathematical angles also have meaning, and that brings in yet another level to the complexity of what it all says. And there's kind of 5 basic angles that we look at that have a meaning, although every angle has an esoteric meaning on another level, but the 5 kind of overall ones are what's called a conjunction, and that's when the planets are together in line with each other from the point of view of the Earth. So that's when their energies work together. They conjunct. They come together. The second angle that has importance is what's called a sextile, and a sextile is a 60-degree angle. And what a sextile does is, that's kind of 60 degrees right about there, is what a sextile does is it provides opportunity. If, for example, you have your sun, which is your sole purpose, sextiling Mercury, which is your thinker, your communicator, that means that through life you're going to have real opportunity to speak and share your knowledge. Your mind, your mental aspect, your rational self, your teaching self is going to be hand in hand with your soul purpose in a really opportunistic way. So that's an example of how that would work. The next angle of importance is a 90-degree angle, kind of like that. And a 90-degree angle is creative tension. That's where we have one energy that wants to go this way and another energy that wants to go sideways. And sometimes they work and sometimes they hit each other and they don't. And they just like, conflict. So that's how a square works, is sometimes they flow and sometimes they have creative tension. And it's like one wants to go that way and one wants to go that way, and they just kind of bang in the middle and then you have to kind of work through those energies. So again, what we're doing is we're applying the information, we're applying those ideas, whichever one falls truth for ourselves, and then putting that into the bigger definition, putting that into the bigger whole. So that's the first three. Let's see here. The next one is a 120-degree angle. It's about like that. And that one is cosmic flow. That one is creating, that's where the planets work together in harmony, and it just kind of happens without effort. That first one, that second one that I mentioned, the sextile, that's where opportunities are presented, but you have to be active to catch them. With a trine, which is the 120 angle, that one, it just kind of happens whether you do anything or not. It's already there. And then the last one that's of major, or that's looked at, is opposition. And when two energies are opposing, that's when they're 180 degrees apart, or directly in line from each other, with the Earth as a fulcrum in the middle again. And when they are opposing, it doesn't necessarily mean conflict. I like to think of opposing planets or planets in opposition as being on a teeter-totter. One is, when one is up, the other is down, and vice versa. When the other is up, the other is down. And they work kind of in harmony like that. They work together to provide a balance. And that's another perceptual idea, because some people do see them as conflicting. They're opposing, one is versus the other. But I like to think of them as that teeter-totter instead. One harmonizes with the other. One has what the other doesn't, and then the other has what the other doesn't, and then they come together in that form. So layers and layers and levels and levels and levels of complexity. Now then, to have astrology work for each of us, what we do is we put the information into our own chart. Each one of us originated at a particular point in time, so each one of us has a chart that corresponds with who we are. And once that chart is cast, that's called your natal chart, that is true always. Now there's levels of astrology where you can progress that chart, but that's another level. The core of it is that you always reflect what your natal chart is. That's like your innermost truth is what that point is. And then when we're looking at transiting astrology, when we're looking at the motion of the planets and we're looking at where they affect us, what we do is we plot the measurement, plot the angle of where they are back into our own chart as a reference. So where the planets are right now in the heavens, each one of us is experiencing in a little bit of a different way, because each one of us is starting from a different place. Therefore, each one of us has a different experience as to how it's affecting us. Now the planets, as they're occurring, they're making angles not only with themselves, but in the heavens, those angles also correspond. Again, we have to think in terms of a mathematical corresponding. They correspond with the planets that we have within each of us. And again, that's where the different effect of how life flows by, what happens and what doesn't happen, and what influences are happening. Sometimes we have work issues and family issues and parent issues and money issues and all these different things. There's different quadrants within astrology that mean different aspects of our life, and they're all touched upon for each of us at different times, depending on, again, that starting point. We always refer any kind of transiting means the moving of it. We always refer transiting astrology into that initial place, into who we are from that initial beginning. Now then, there's lots of books out there that tell you too can learn how to cast a chart, which more power to you if you want to do it that way. But there is really exact, intense mathematical measurement going on. And what I recommend is that you have a computer program chart your chart for you so that you get your mathematics exact, because it's very complex, because you have to bring into effect the hour and the minute of your birth, and most charts only deal with the hour in terms of looking up, trying to cast your own. But you also have to bring into effect where on the Earth you are referencing from, because remember, we're a sphere floating around in space, and wherever you are standing on that sphere, i.e. where you were born, has an effect too, because this is a sphere, the angle through which, if you were born, say, up here, let's see, there's my sphere. I should get a globe when I do this so I can point at it. That would be a good idea, actually. As we're standing on the sphere, our perception of the angle, if we're standing up here on the globe, there's like Missoula right there on my little invisible globe. If we're standing up here, how we perceive space is going to be from a different angle than if we were somewhere else, like further south towards the equator. As people are born more and more north or more and more south of the equator, the angles within their chart get wider, which is a whole nother level of knowledge, because they're not 30, 30, 30, 30, 30. It doesn't work that way, because we're measuring from a sphere, and part of our sphere goes further back. So complex mathematics. I highly recommend, like I said, if you're interested in embarking on a journey of learning more about astrology, chart your chart and let the machine do the math for you, because it is very intense trying to do the math in your head, or by hand, so to speak. But once you have that charted, then those are your grid points forever. Those are the set standards for each one of us, and each one of us has a different one. Even twins have moments of separation between who they are, so even their charts would reflect ever so subtle difference, but it would still be a difference nonetheless. However, again, referencing that idea that each one of us starts at a different place, that means that we're all experiencing where the planets are in a different way, because we have it specific to what each of our own starting point is. And where the planets land within that system, within that circle, according to what our starting point is, that's where the unique differences come into play. And that's also where the timing comes into play, because the planets all move at constant speed, so we know exactly when they're going to be where. Exactly. We know this already, because they all move constantly, so it exists in printed form. This is my what's called an ephemeris for this first half of the 21st century. And what this is it tells me exactly where all the planets are going to be at any given month for the next 50 years. Handy tool. This is a fabulous tool. One of the ways I like to think about this book is in reference of space travel, because again, right now we're all standing on the Earth, and I don't think space travel is a matter of if, I believe it's a matter of when. And when we're all ready to leap out of our orbit, this book right here tells me exactly where every single planet will be, at least for the first 50 years of this decade, or of this century. So I could use this as, again, part of that roadmap to outer space, because I know exactly where the planets are going to be. So if perchance I were to take a road trip out in orbit, literally out in space, I could use this data to find out, to aim directly at the planets. Vast is a big empty space. Our little chunks of rock that float out in it, they're pretty insignificant in terms of, in reference, or in comparison to, I should say, the amount of the empty space that's around them all. So knowing exactly where they're going to be is a handy tool. Anyway, moving onward, what astrology can tell us. Now, each one of us has a different starting point, and with that different starting point, this is what sets up the goal of who we are. And what astrology has done is it's put meaning into the motion of the planets. And it's from this meaning that the whole picture of who each one of us is as an individual comes into play. Each one of the planets has a meaning, which I've already talked about a little bit. Mercury is our communicator. Venus is how we love and experience beauty and harmony. Mars is our action. It's what's getting done. It's our temperament. It's our sense of assertion. It's our sense of aggression. Jupiter is our sense of truth, our sense of seeking and finding philosophy. Saturn is our sense of work ethic and building and structure and pragmaticness and practicality. Chiron is the wounded healer. It's healing, it's learning what's wrong and learning how to fix it. So that comes out in health ways, but it also comes out in analytical ways, like people who know how to fix machines and have real mechanical minds. That's also a Virgo quality or a Chiron quality. Let's see here. Chiron, what's next? Uranus. Uranus is the planet of the revolution. It's the planet of fulfilling ourselves from our or finding our deepest potential and bringing it out, bringing it forth, allowing it to be. Using astrology as a tool, astrology is very much an Aquarian tool, which is Uranus, Uranian tool, because it's bringing the future, or it's meeting the future head on. It's kind of that link between the past and the future and going forward from that place. The next planet out is Neptune. Neptune is our relationship with our inner spiritual. This is our inner mystic and our inner psychicness. This is reading our own psyche and going within it and exposing ourselves to our own soul and having forgiveness. And then the last planet out is Pluto, of course, which means ultimately it's the transformation. It's the change. It's facing our own inner demons, our deepest emotional stuff, and bringing it through, bringing it out, giving birth again to the new self. So using all of those meanings, we put them together with the sign placements, and together with that information, on top of that, we put that into the house structure, and that's where the whole picture comes from, the whole picture that's described by our natal chart. Now, each one of us has a different natal chart because we've all originated at a different point, in a different place, at a different moment in time. So that's where the uniqueness of each one of us as individuals comes through, is looking at the full picture, more than just our sun sign. Now then, in terms of the quick reference, most people, they want to gather themselves up in little groups of who their sun sign is. Well, really, it's your rising sign that most describes your outward personality. Your rising sign, which is again that in physical reality, that's that place that the horizon of the Earth was pointing to, the eastern horizon of the Earth. That way's due east that I'm pointing at. It's where that point was pointing at in outer space. That describes the surface of our personality. So it's actually your rising sign, what's known as your rising sign, is the most obvious astrologically. This is the point that we have within us that's the most visible, that's the most, that comes forth with the most, or that shows the most, I guess I could say it that way. So we think that we have comparisons like I say, I'm a Sagittarius, if you're a Sagittarius, that we're similar, which we are on some deeper level, but it's really the rising signs. If you compare yourself with other people who have the same rising sign as you, then you'll really see a similarity. Because once the rising sign is set, then the timing of how the planets all flow around that circle, the timing is all the same for you as somebody else who has the same rising sign as you. Even if their sun sign is different, even if their planets, all the other planets are different, they're still going to have a similar sense of timing because the motion of the planets is going to affect them in the same place at relatively the same time. So it's really your rising sign that gives away the most information about the self. You can tell people, hi, I'm a Gemini or I'm an Aries or whatever, but it's your rising sign that gives away the most information about yourself. And that's the most descriptive because it's the surface of the personality. This is not only who you are to yourself, but it's who other people see you or it's how other people see you. It's that surface. It's who we are. Kind of, we emanate who we are off of the surface of ourselves, and that's what people see as they look at us. So that's actually the most important aspect of, or astrologically speaking, that's the most important quality in a whole chart, is knowing that part, that piece, is knowing your rising sign. And again, that's the part that's specific on the hour and the minute of our birth. So it's a really exact thing. Some people don't know their time of birth, which provides a lot more work, but it can be figured out because you can work backwards. The timing of how astrology works is just right on. Each one of the planets has a different meaning in your life. So what we do when somebody doesn't know their time of birth is we work backwards. We ask them, okay, what's going on in your life and where is it? And we, kind of tick, 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 and shift everything back and forth until we get it to fit into, or until we get the truths of what's happening to fit into the grid work of who they are. So that's called chart rectification, which is very, it's very time-consuming, it's very in-depth, but it can be done. So all is not lost. When people don't know their hour and minute of birth, because a lot of people don't, it was just made a law to put it on the birth certificates in, I believe, 1973. So there's a lot of people out there in the baby boomer generations that don't have that recorded. Now, of course, sometimes their parents were astute enough to write it down, or at least to have a guideline, sometime in the morning, or right at noon, or something like that. So having an initial point to start from does make it easier. But all is not lost if you don't have that point. We work backwards and find it. Let's see here. But of course, it's easiest when you just start with the truth. If you know that minute and we go from there, that makes things just right on the surface, good to go, ready to go. So what astrology can tell you? It tells each one of us who we are, what our purpose is, why we are here. It tells us how we communicate. It tells us how we think, how we love, what we're attracted to doing. It tells us where our truths are. It tells us what our life karma is, what we perchance have to struggle to figure out. All of these are planets or are qualities of the planets. I'm kind of going in order with those questions, but they still fit. Now, what astrology tells us all that we're all like a package deal of all of these qualities together. Each one of us has all of the signs within us somewhere actively, because some people, it's like we're never without all of the signs. We all have a mixture of it within us. But where that mixture comes out, again, that's what makes us all unique. And that's what makes one person different from another person, is those qualities. Now, another level of what astrology can tell us is, again, the timing of things as it goes by, the timing of the shift. As planets move through the signs, when we take their motion and again plot it into that initial place, plot it into our own chart, that's what creates the timing. Because again, these books, the ephemeris, plots where, or it tells me where the planets will be when, at every given, at any given time or any given moment or any given day. But we reference that into our own chart, and that's what gives us the timing of when things shift. Now, some things are really fast. The moon moves completely around the cycle every 28 days, so it shifts through a sign or it shifts through a house placement every 2 to 2.5 days. So that one's really quick. It kind of changes our emotional flow through the month cycle. Other planets are very slow. Planets like Saturn, that takes 3 years to get across a house. Planets like Uranus and Neptune, those take 7 years and 9 years to get across a house. So so influences of those planets, they affect a huge chunk of our life. I mean, 10 years, that's nothing to sneeze at. That's a good solid, it's like you are learning something deep during that period. And then, of course, Pluto is the slowest planet, and it takes 12 to 14 years to get across a house or to get across a sign, depending on the width of the house. Because again, the width is all changing depending on where on the sphere you're measuring from. Another one of those specific points of data. So this gives us reference to when shifts and influences happen in our life. And I tell you, it is to the moment when a planet is plotted to shift across one of those house cusps, what's called a house cusp. One house means they have shifting and flow of meaning from one house to the next. The date that the planet reaches a particular measurement and crosses one of those houses, the influences will change and your life will reflect it so strongly. You will know when the planets make a change because there's a shift in your reality. What that shift is, of course, depends on which planet is making the motion, which planet is making the change. And that's, again, how each one of us has unique experience from each other, is because we all have this different sense of timing because we refer it back into that initial grid that we are. Now then, another level of astrology, it never ends, it keeps going. If we take the mathematics of astrology, if we take all those numbers, what we can do is we can compare ourselves to each other. And through those comparisons, we can learn what we are, or we can see what we are learning from each other. What I would do is I would take the mathematics of my own chart. In fact, I do this with every chart that I've looked at. I do what's called compositing it with somebody else's chart. And what a composite is, where you take one set of data and another set of data and you blend them together. You find the midpoints and then you take the average. This is looking at it from a mathematical point of view. Because again, to say that something is, for example, say that something is Taurus, what Taurus is it's the 30th degree to the 60th degree. So it's numbers. It's distance. It's numbers. So what we do when we take a composite, or when we do a composite, is that creates a third. If I composite my chart or my numbers with somebody else's chart or somebody else's numbers, that creates the midpoints there create a chart in the middle. And that chart in the middle, that composite chart, that comparison chart, that describes what the two people being compared are learning with each other. And each person, if I were to composite my chart with each person in this room, what we are learning from each other would be completely different, because each one of us in this room starts from a different place. And if you take all that math and blend it together, it's going to be a different answer for each one of us. So again, levels of complexity. But it can be gotten through. And when you do get through it and you see the truth that it's here to share with you, it's mind-blowing. It's just beautiful how exact and right on it is, and how the timing and the flow and the perfection. Because each one of us is a walking example of what that initial data is. In clear, shiny, truthful wholeness. It's right there. So as an astrologer, one of the things I recommend, because, obviously it's not for everybody to know this, know everything about all of it, because it goes on and on and on and on as to what you can learn. I mean, I'm constantly learning new things or new ways of looking at things, and I've been studying astrology every day for the past 15 years, so I've been there for a while. But on the surface, one of the things I recommend for people is know at least the big three. The big three within astrology is your sun sign, and that's the one thing that's cyclical, so the sun in motion. And actually, here's a little trivial point, and that is circle measurement is 360 degrees, and the Earth takes 365 days to get around the sun. And because they're almost similar, and then of course leap year, once every 4 years we add a day, and so that blends it back to whole again. This is what makes the motion, or the apparent motion of the sun, cyclical. That's why we can look at every year from, let's see, for example, right now the sun is in Gemini. So every year from May 21st to June 21st, the sun is in Gemini. That's the one thing that's cyclical in reference to a year. Every other planet is going to be in a relatively different place. Like next year at this time, Mercury will be in a different sign than it is now. Next year at this time, Mars, all the other planets will be in a relatively different place. The sun is the one thing that is cyclical because of that balance, 360, 365, because those are close enough. That's what makes that cyclical. How did I get into that topic? Let me think. Where am I? Composites. Oh, what people should know. One of the things I recommend, because astrology goes on and on and on and on and on, and there's so many cycles and so many different levels and layers to look at, one of the places I recommend that we start, or that each person know for themselves, is what's called, or what I like to refer to as the big three. That's where we came in. Your sun sign, which is your sole purpose. This is what you are here to do. And the house placement of the sun sign, that really describes like how you're here to do it, i.e. what your job of life is going to be. Look to the house placement of your sun sign in your natal chart, and that'll give you a lot of answers as to what you're supposed to do. It's like, what am I here doing on the earth? That's what you're here doing, is wherever your sun is. The second aspect of the big three is, of course, your rising sign. Your rising sign describes the surface of your personality, and this is actually the more obvious factor. Your sun sign is like your sole purpose. It's your inner drive. But how you bring it about, the costume of the self, that's your rising sign. So actually that's the number one factor that I recommend people know for sure. And then the third of the big three is what your moon sign is, because the moon describes our feelings. This describes our emotions and the flow of who we are to ourself. And then, of course, the house placement that corresponds to the moon, that shows where you kind of have emotional sustenance, where your emotions are supported. That's what I call the big three: the sun sign, the moon sign, and the rising sign. And if you at least know that about yourself, that'll answer a lot of questions. This is what I wanted to go at, kind of a secondary bonus. We have some planetary motion happening right now, today being June 6th, 2001, that's having strong effect on what's going on and how we're thinking and how we're communicating. So I'll tell us about that quick. First of all, I've got it on a little sign here. Mercury is retrograde. This is a famous one. A lot of people know about this one. Mercury is the planet of the communicator. It's the planet of getting your message across, getting your knowledge across. Mercury also rules the timing of daily life. This is getting your phone calls. This is answering your email. This is seeing who you need to see on your path and having it be the right timing. Now, when Mercury goes retrograde, first of all, a little explanation of retrograde motion. Physically, what that means in the universe is one planet is on the opposite sign of the sun from the other. So as they go around in their orbit, say, this hand will describe one side of the sun, and this hand will be on the other side of the sun. From our point of view, this is Earth over here. Here's the sun in the middle. I'll be the sun, I guess. The Earth is over here. It's going around that way, and the other planet is on the other side of the sun, going around in the same direction. But from our point of view, it looks like it's going backwards, see, because it's going like that. So having that apparent backwards motion, now nothing in space stops and turns around. It doesn't do that. It's all perspective. It's keeping in mind that we are standing on a body that is also moving in space. That's where retrograde motion comes from. Now, what retrograde motion means is it takes the timing, it takes the lesson of what we're learning, and it turns it kind of inside out. It throws it to the inside. It makes lessons more deep, makes lessons more internal. It also makes lessons more subtle. Now, Mercury specifically, Mercury being the planet of communication, this just went retrograde. This is a 3-week process, and I'll hold up my little sign again. This happens 3 times a year, so we've been there before. We'll be there again, no problem. But what it does is it kind of pushes us to the limits, because we get these constant tests of communication. And by the end of the 3 weeks, I guarantee you, we'll all be ready to take a nap. This just started the other night, ironically enough, right when the snow started to fall. It started at 11:22 p.m. And what's interesting is how it has effect is it affects the timing of getting to where you're going. It affects the communication between people. And when communication is affected between people, depending on what that communication is, it makes your temper or your stress level a little bit more acute. So people are more like, ready to jump off the handle or jump off the cliff or whatever it is that they're doing. Anyway, this is a 3-week process. It'll go until June 27th. It began at nighttime. It ends at nighttime, which is interesting to note, even within the same hour. And what we have to do when we see things happening, when we see mercurial-ruled events happening in our life, don't take it personally. because this is a time period that during this 3 weeks that just began a couple days ago, during this 3-week cycle, we'll be tested. Our stamina will be tested, our foresight will be tested, and our temperament will be tested. And the best advice for that is don't let it get to you. When you see things snapping out of place and when you see them like starting to react, kind of step off the path of reaction and let the train whoosh by, and it won't get you. But it adds a little foresight into being aware. I have a perfect example for this, is that this would have started at 11:22 p.m. the other night, right when we had that freak snowstorm that kind of came through. And I'm on the radio on Sunday nights, and that was the night that it began. I go on the radio at 2 in the morning. I usually take a nap before I go in, so I set my alarm for 1:09 in the morning to wake up and go to the radio station. I leave at 1:37. Well, sure enough, in very mercurial retrograde fashion, I didn't hear my alarm. I slept through it or something. I don't know if it was going off for 37 minutes or what, but all of a sudden I woke up really disoriented and confused, and it's like, where am I? Who am I? What's that noise? And then all of a sudden I remembered, whoa, I have to go to the radio, and it was later than when I usually leave, and I'm just waking up, so I have to get dressed and all that stuff. And so that's like a perfect example of Mercury retrograde. It's going to do things like that. And of course that day, the snow happened. So all over town, communication was all weird. There's been electric lines down. There's phone lines down. There's, with the electric lines being down, people's clocks aren't set right. So people, the whole timing is off. Perfect Mercury example. Perfect. I mean, it's like, of course it snowed that day. When else would it snow? But anyway, we've got that cycle for 3 weeks. So just hold strong in your faith, hold strong in your stamina, and we'll all get through it, no problem. And we've got another one going on that's specific to this moment here and now, and that's that the planet Mars is doing the same thing. Mars is retrograde as well. Mars is the planet of action. It's the planet of doing something. A little backtrack here. Mercury, that one happens 3 times a year, so we kind of get it all the time, so we're used to that one. Mars is a little bit less frequent. This one happens, it doesn't even happen every year. It's like once every 14 months, I think. So sometimes there's a whole year in the middle where we don't get it. But anyway, be here now. We have it. Mars began retrograding on May 11th, and it'll go until July 19th of this year, 2001, and which is an 11-week cycle. And what Mars does is it rules your action. It rules things happening or things occurring. Now again, the same idea. When we have to watch for the subtleties, because retrograde action, just because it changes the timing doesn't mean it's bad. It means we just have to be more self-aware of what's happening. And when things start to react with each other, step out of the way of the reaction. But when things look like they could come together and flow, by golly, jump into that path. So it's a test of our awareness. It's like the universe is coming down and it's throwing a test on our path to see if we're paying attention. So Mars is action. It's making sure that we're paying attention and following through on what we're given, following through on the impulses or insights that come by. Mercury is making sure that we're aware of what those. So Mercury has to do with understanding. Mars has to do with action. So the Mars cycle is longer than the Mercury cycle. So we've got that one until the middle of July. So if we're all working on projects or ideas, now is the time to kind of network it and jump onto the path and jump off the path and kind of be aware. But once that ends, on July 19th, after that time period, we'll get to utilize all this energy, everything that we learned over this 11-week cycle, full speed forward. Same with Mercury. Once it's over with, kind of the day that it shifts back and goes what's called direct motion again, kind of we have to stop and let the dust settle. And those days are kind of traumatic, so you just have to, I recommend that people take a nap on the day that things go direct again, because that's kind of the day that then you have to wait for the dust to come down and fall. But anyway, given those two timers, that makes this summer is very, it's very unique. We're each being tested through our knowledge and our communication and through our actions. Now then, if you are paying attention and you're aware of it, you can use this energy to your advantage. Because you see things. Some people, when things start to go wrong, they fly off the handle and then they have all this stress and all this worry and they put themselves in a whole state. It doesn't have to be that way. When you see things reacting, Step off the path. Do something nice for yourself. Relax. Go a different way. Instead of like getting all mad, the road is blocked. Instead of like getting stuck there, just think, oh, okay, turn left and go the other way. So it's all in our perspective. It's all in how we view what it is. But the important thing is to stay in the flow. Stay in motion. Stay going. That's what the whole retrograde direct motion is about. Stay in motion. So when life kind of stops you on the path, look what other direction is open. You don't have to always go forward. You can go to the side. You can go to the other side. So it's a matter of, you can go up, yeah, exactly. It's a matter of paying attention and kind of going around the blocks and utilizing the blocks as stepping stones to get closer to our ultimate goal, which is, I don't know, I suppose we all have a different goal, self-understanding. It's kind of, I figure when we figure it out, that's when we're done. That's kind of my view. But anyway, those things are specific to this summer, to this time period. So let it work for you. I'm considering both this time of Mercury and Mars just a time to leap forward with plans, leap forward with activities, especially Mars, because Mars is our action. It's getting things done. It's getting things accomplished. It's going forward. So now's the time to make those plans and follow through on them. Figure out what you want to do, because Mars is about doing, and then do it. Apply it. Of course, where Mars is specific to each one of us. Where is Mars? Oh, golly. Right, Sagittarius. Mars is in Sagittarius. So right now, where we're all being tested is in following our truth. Mars is currently in the sign of Sagittarius, so each one of us is experiencing this energy forward, or this energy, or where we're being tested, is in walking in our path. And as long as you stay in your truth, walk in your path, you'll be given your lessons. You'll see where you need to go. It's if you try to deceive that sense of truth, that's when things go wrong. And that's where our test is, because Mars is in that sign. Now Mercury, on the other hand, Mercury is retrograding in Gemini, which is also unique because Gemini is the sign that rules Mercury. And it doesn't always happen this way. It's specific to this time. Mercury is retrograding in its natural sign. So where we're being tested specifically in our communication sense is it's like a double layer of itself. We're being tested in communication through communicating. We're being tested in our knowledge through what we know. So it's like a double layer of itself. So thinking and speaking is through the rational mind, through Gemini, and our actions, our doing, that Mars quality, is through Sagittarius. Walk in our truth. Seek your teachers. Seek your students, because each one of us teaches and learns from each other. So we're all teachers and we're all students at the same time. So, as a whole, that is what astrology is, and that is what is happening. Let's see, what else do I want to show? I have a little sample of, a couple of samples of how a chart, what a chart looks like. This is the chart for this moment. It's actually not this moment. This is the chart for 6 o'clock, right when I would have began. And specific to this moment, and this is what a chart looks like. It's all these glyphs. So it's learning learning what the glyphs all mean. That's just memorization. We have to remember because it's symbolic, or they're symbols of a deeper meaning, and the meaning is where all the studying comes in. But anyway, with this one we have the moon. We have all four of these right now in Sagittarius. We have Pluto, transforming our truth. We have Mars, our action. That one's the retrograding one there. And then Chiron and the moon. Chiron is healing through our truth, and of course the moon is kind of being emotionally fulfilled through our truth. Not only is Sagittarius through our truth, but it's also real accepting. It's a mutable sign, so it can experience all sorts of different people, and because it wants to know more. So it's got this openness of encountering everybody it can and having an interaction. And then, of course, we have this whole lump opposing it all up here in Gemini. We've got Saturn, the Sun, Jupiter, and Mercury. Mercury just started going retrograding a couple days ago, a day and a half ago. All of those are in Gemini, which balance. See, we've got this whole teeter-totter effect going on even right now with all of these energies being on one side or the other side of the Sun. So we're in our heads, we're in our teaching mode, we're in our thinking mode, our knowledge mode, and we're in our speaking and walking in our truth mode at the same time. So that's one of the big lessons of this time period. Now then, another big lesson of this time period that I like to kind of open up and talk about is the fact that we've got 4 cornerstones that describe the overall age that we are in. Because right now we are at the beginning of what is known as the age of Aquarius. What an age measures is it looks at our galaxy from the bigger picture. An age measures where our galaxy, or our solar system is within our galaxy. And each one of the cycles, this is a whole other layer of astrology, each one of the cycles moves backwards from each other. The Earth rotates one direction, the planets go the other direction, and the orbiting of our solar system goes back the other direction the same way as the Earth. Therefore, what's known as an age, which is the measurement of where our solar system is within our galaxy, ages go backwards. And they shift approximately every 2,000 years. Well, right now we're on the verge of the age of Aquarius, just like they were singing about in the 60s. That song, it's really real, because when you're talking about 60 years, to sing a song 30 years early is, nothing. It's right there. We are ending the age of Pisces. This is the ages go backwards idea. The historical figure who was Jesus Christ brought in the age of Pisces. We are here to know ourselves and to forgive ourselves, to know ourselves as divine and forgive and be. That's kind of the overall lesson of the age of Pisces. The age of Aquarius is it's time to fulfill our higher potentials. It's time to fulfill our wholeness, each one of us as individuals, but it's also time to bring our neighbors with us and to help each and every one of us fulfill that sense of wholeness and to bring it out of ourselves. That's what Aquarius is all about. Knowing, learning, encountering the self, and being that sense of self, being and opening up to that sense of truth of who we are. Now then, we've got 4 cornerstones that describe the fact that we are at this juncture, this changing point in time. And each one of us, again, is experiencing this. Specifically, each one of us is experiencing it in a different place in our lives, depending on where it is in your chart. But what is being experienced is 2 things. Both Neptune and Uranus, the planets, those 2 planets, are currently in the location of Aquarius. Neptune is the spiritual planet, our connection to our own inner mystic, and then Uranus is the Aquarian planet, so it's in its natural place right now, which makes it that much stronger. It's the planet of finding your fullest potential and being it. Coming out with yourself, letting go of your fears, letting go of your shyness, letting go of whatever it is, and being who you are, each one of us. So we've got those 2 planets kind of opening us up in the sign of Aquarius, which is opening us up, opening up our experience, opening up our mysticalness, opening up our conversation with our own soul. So those are 2 of the cornerstones of this time period. And those are both long-term. They're long-term like this decade. But the beginning of the 21st century has this influence right there. So this is like definitely a describer of the 21st century. Using astrology as a tool. Astrology itself is very much an Aquarian tool. So using this tool as self-knowledge is going to totally expand and explode this century, this decade, this time now. It's growing and growing and growing because people are seeking that place of truth. Now then, the other cornerstone that describes where we are is the fact that both Pluto, the planet Pluto, and the planet Chiron are currently in the sign of Sagittarius. And both of these are also long-term. Pluto will take about 15 years to get through this sign. Actually, it's not quite 15. It's about 12. It began in 95 and is going through 2008. Or I guess that's 13. But anyway, Pluto is the planet of absolute transformation, change. In order to be changed, the old way has to be dead to itself in order for the new way to be reborn. So it's got this, it's time to encounter your deepest stuff and heal it, fix it, get over it, let go of it, whatever it is, but move beyond it so that we can go to our reborn place. Okay, we have that planet, Pluto, in Sagittarius, which is again seeking and walking in our truth. But we also have the planet of Chiron in Sagittarius as well, Chiron being the wounded healer. So here we are healing ourselves and fixing ourselves and transforming ourselves through this energy of finding our teachers, finding our truth, walking in our light, and being that, being ourself. And we brought in this century with those two energies exactly conjuncting early in the morning of December 30th, 1999. So we opened up the 21st century with the healing energy and the transforming energy, kind of metamorphosizing ourselves, coming out of our cocoon, changing into the butterflies that we are. We brought in this century with those two energies exactly together, numerically. So those four cornerstones, Pluto and Chiron and Sagittarius, transforming and healing through our truth, and Neptune and Uranus in Aquarius, encountering our mystical self and soul and expanding and opening up to the potential of having active conversation with that aspect of ourselves. That is the place that we are all out at this point in time. That's what we are bringing in, or that's what we have brought in this century with, is those four elements. So those are the cornerstones of this whole movement of encountering and knowing our own soul. So this is a very auspicious time to be living, because it's time to really leap forward. As human beings, we've been living kind of on a more base level, and we have so much more potential to do more, to encounter and use the power of our light, to use the power of our knowledge, to use the power of our energy to self-heal and to heal our world. And right now is a time period of leaping forward into using that power, using that energy, learning how it works, and allowing it to work for us. It's time to, again, stop, living in fear, stop living in limitation, stop living in greed and kind of taking away the power or putting power under the thumb. Those days are over. It's moving forward time. Now the Earth, different factions of the Earth are going to have events that happen that seem like they're working against that idea. It's an illusion. It is time to move forward. And astrologically, it very much describes that. We are at a time of moving forward. It's a time to heal. It's a time to accept. It's a time of living together. And that's what we're doing. So I look at all the weirdness in the world and this war and that fight and this hate crime and that whatever, and I'm just like, it's an illusion. Each one of us is held responsible for walking in our truth, to heal ourselves. As we heal ourselves, the earth is thereby healed as well. And that's where our focus comes in. It's time to focus on, accepting who we are, going within and being that person to our fullest extent and offering that gift to the world. And that's the changing of the time, is being in that place. No longer trying to overpower people, but to empower people, to lift them up, to be, to shine, to live. And that's what astrology can do and what it can tell you. So I think I'm there. Yeah, thank you. So what I definitely recommend is that each person have their own chart charted and go from there informationally. But it's definitely very important knowledge, and it unlocks the key to understanding who we are. It's definitely, there's many esoteric tools that help us answer those questions, but astrology is definitely a valid and very accurate way of answering those questions. So I recommend it highly for sure. Yes.
Taking into consideration all these variants that you have mentioned, it seems as if the daily horoscope in the newspaper doesn't have a whole lot of value.
Yeah, if you... I agree. First of all, I highly recommend the guy who's syndicated in the Independent newspaper, Rob Bresney, because he empowers people. Yeah, exactly. He empowers people to encounter themselves and create. And so I recommend him hands down. But one of the things I tell people is read the horoscope for all three of your signs: your sun sign, your moon sign, and your rising sign. They would be the same. So you would just read, like for me, I'm a rising Scorpio, moon in Capricorn, sun in Sagittarius. So I just read the horoscope for all three of those: Capricorn, Sagittarius, and Scorpio. Now I recommend him for sure. Other of the sun sign predictions, they upset me, because I can tell that they're just written from a point of view and that the person writing them makes no reference to astrological motion. Because that's another thing, Rob Bresney makes reference to astrological motion. And me as an astrologer, I know what he's talking about, and I know that he knows what he's talking about. So it's very good stuff. But if you want to look at predictive astrology, where events come out of your life is based on the house placement of where they are. And the house placement is a reference of your rising sign. So if you want to look at predictive astrology, you have to refer to your rising sign. So in terms of, in terms of looking up a horoscope based on your sun sign, as an astrologer, I give that very little credibility. But if you look at it from the point of view of your rising sign, then a lot more accuracy can come in. And you can even read what they've written, but just read it from a different point of view. Read your rising sign instead of your sun sign. Well, then you have to calculate the chart. Exactly. That's based on the minute, the birth time and minute, and then again bringing into idea your longitude and latitude of where you originated as well. Good question, though. I'm glad you asked that, because exactly. Predictive astrology comes with the motion through the houses, so you need to refer to the rising sign. Mm-hmm. Great. Well, thank you all for coming down. Yeah. I have flyers on the table back there of my business as an astrologer. I also hang out in the middle of the night on the radio. I've been late night radio in Missoula for 7 years now. I initially started on KUFM. Right now I've been on KBGA since 97 and 89.9. But I hang out in the middle of the night, which is kind of an odd time an odd time frame for mortal humans, but somehow it works. And indeed, what I do, I mostly play music, but between songs, I tie songs together very consciously. I'm very aware of what people's lyrics are.
What time do you start?
Oh, I start at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, so I'm on from 2 to 6. Yeah, really late night. Yeah. And then I share information in the middle, what's going on. So I speak a lot about the moon phase or the Mercury or Mars or whatever's going on that's specific to the moment. I talk about this. Now, another thing that I do is I've recorded all of my radio shows. From the beginning, I have many, many, many piles of tapes in my world. And what I'm starting to do is offer those, because even if whether you hear the information exactly when it's happening or not, I try to deliver it in a way in which people can learn something. Because I talk about what the full moon means and what the new moon means. And those things are going to happen again. Whether you hear it the day that it is happening or not, it doesn't matter. So I'm offering my radio shows as a tape. And people get the lesson you're supposed to hear, because I've got all the information that I share, the moment that it's happening is on the tape as well. So the tapes are kind of filled with music, good music that I like, and it's intermixed with commentary, and I deliver it in a way that teaches the truth. Again, whether you listen to it the moment that it's happening or not doesn't matter. It's still going to have truths in it that I share forth. And, where I can be found. I hail in the Atlantis Art Colloquium, which is part of why I call myself Mooncat of Atlantis. Mooncat came from my business, Cat Over the Moon. A friend of mine just called me that one day, and I was just like, oh, I like that, and it stuck, because I never thought of it myself. And I'm in the Atlantis Art Colloquium, which is actually right next door and up the stairs, by appointment. My phone number's on my flyers. I also work at the Feng Shui Center, which is the New Age store downtown on Main Street, 115 West Main. And I'm there on Thursdays from 1 to 5. And the People's Market on Saturday morning out on, Spruce Street. I'm out there as well. I don't take astrology with me out to the People's Market. I just do tarot readings and then network. But I have my radio tapes out there. That's what it was. I knew I was getting to something. So I can be found all over the place. I'm also touring around the country. I go to other cities and do readings. I've been in Helena and Hot Springs, and where else have I been? I did a reading in Conrad and in Shelby. Yay! And I'm actually going to Europe this fall, so I'm going to really spread it far and wide when I go there. I also do art, and I coordinate a gallery. I coordinate the Blue Hallway and the Crystal Theater. And I model for artists, so I'm a figure model and a role model for women, kind of women of Rubenesque qualities, which is fun. Let's see here. I make medicine tinctures. I make herbal medicines. That's another level. I make jewelry. That's another thing. I've been a really avid photographer for the past 3 years, so I have documentation galore. That's another thing that I do. And what does the back of my flyer say? Networking friends across the planet. That's what I'm doing. So there it is. So that's, I think, pretty much the whole story of what I'm doing, where I can be found, etc. So my flyers have my phone number. Please call me if you'd like an appointment, or come down to see me at the Feng Shui Center or the People's Market. And I'd love to share. Perfect. Thank you all for coming down. Yeah. Yay.